All right, there we go. Yeah, so we're going to start with a word of prayer and get on to chapter 4 with application on trauma-informed kids ministry with playtime. I'll open us in prayer and we can get started. God, I thank you for calling us to these positions. Lord, thank you for each person who's responded to this call. Lord, I know sometimes we face trials and hardships, but Lord, help us set those aside as we walk through our doors on Sunday mornings and midweek nights and whatever other time that we have events. Lord, just keep Satan at bay and help us just serve our kids, serve our families, Lord, so that they hear about you, that they know you, that they are discipled and just grow in your word. Lord, help us as we reach kids who've experienced trauma. Help us relate and reach to them the best that we can. In your name we pray. Amen. All right. So chapter 4 was all about playtime. And after reading, I just wanted to make like my whole Sunday about play and having fun and just doing all the fun things. But we can't do all that the whole time. So let's dive into chapter 4, question 1. In the story at the beginning of this chapter, Greg wanted to find out why Max was breaking the rules. He sat down next to Max and played with him while they talked. Would the conversation have gone differently if Greg had pulled Max into the hallway and talked to him face to face? Explain your thoughts.
I definitely think sitting down and playing with him kept his defenses down. Kids, especially kids who get in trouble a lot and feel unjustified. Like I see a lot of kids who are unaware of what they're doing, or they seem unaware. And so in their mind, they're being constantly in trouble for nothing. And I feel like it helped him. Like had he pulled it out in the hallway, I think he would have immediately been like, I wasn't doing anything wrong. Like it's not that big of a deal. I took it back apart instead of like actually sharing what was wrong.
I totally think that the conversation would have gone differently. We have a girl, she's not exactly like Max, but she does have trauma background. And anytime we try to discipline, and I hate that word because that's not what we do, but that's not what I want to do, but that's what our volunteers end up doing. Anytime we have those conversations with her in her act out moments, she just shuts down. And she does exactly what they explained in chapter 3, not chapter 3, chapter 2 or something like that, where the blank faces happen. And so I think that, yes, had he pulled him out and made it more pointed towards a discipline action, I think it totally would have been a different conversation. And I don't think it would have been helpful for Max.
I definitely think it came off more as Greg wanting to know about Max versus accusing Max. I think it's so easy for us to accuse kids, see them bouncing around. Oh, they're doing this. Oh, they're doing that. Greg took the time to sit next to him, to engage with him, and to talk about what he was feeling in that moment. By pulling him out in the hallway, the kid would have completely shut down and, would have automatically gone on the defensive versus opening up to talk to him.
I love the leading question that Pastor Greg asked when he sat down next to him and said, Pastor Donna told me you were making weapons. Can you tell me more about that? Like, I just love that leading question that he asked him. He didn't say, why did you do that? He asked him, just tell me more about that situation or whatever. And I tend to be the, why are you doing that? Like, there's got to be a reason. And Max did have a reason why he was doing that, but he opened up so much more easily when Greg asked that question. I'm giving you permission to tell me more about what you were doing, instead of being accusatory towards him. And I love that leading question. I also liked how Pastor Donna just very quietly said to Max, we remember our rule is we don't make weapons, or we have to move to a different area. It was like one sentence. She touched him gently to let him know, she wasn't upset at him. And that was also I think that was like a breach in his defenses too. He didn't have a chance to get really defensive from the beginning because of the way the adults interacted with him. And that was a really good example to me of how I can be towards kids when they're acting up.
I thought it was really cool that Greg kind of got alongside, was it Matt? I forget his name, and was pounding the Play-Doh with him together. And like, I would never have thought, if that situation, if I came across that situation, I would never have thought to do that, to pound as a way of getting alongside a child who's going through something, and as a way of opening up conversation with that child, because I would have been like, no, hands are for loving, not for hitting, so it was just it was good to see that, God can use things to change a person's heart and open conversation that you wouldn't expect.
I think so many times it's easy to dismiss behaviors like that, like see the pounding Play-Doh and stop, rather than looking at the heart behind it. And, they didn't know that Max was having, issues until they asked in that moment. And I think that's like, that's an acknowledgement thing. And it probably made Max feel even more, what's the word I'm looking for? Like they truly did care. Like this wasn't just another teacher telling him to stop. It's not another, volunteer telling him don't do that. They saw what he was doing and got to the bottom of it.
Well, and I think even just the fact that he went from the Tinker Toys to the Play-Doh all within that same period of time just really went to show just the amount of respect that he has for the people that in the ministry as a whole. And so it just, to me, it really spoke of the groundwork that they laid and the effort that they put in to create that environment of, we're going to allow you just to come as you are. And we're going to show you Jesus in the midst of where you're at in that moment.
So moving on to question 2, is playtime a regular part of your children's ministry? If so, what is the purpose of this time? In what ways does playtime help the children in your ministry feel safe, regulated, connected, and valued?
I said this before, like before we really started, but I usually read the chapter before, like right after we finish. And so I had like a whole week to talk about it. And unstructured playtime has not been a part of our kids ministry, and not because I'm like, we have to use every minute to share the gospel, but I am terrified of unstructured playtime. I am like, they are going to destroy everything. That's going to be constant fighting. It's going to be constant, like yelling at them to clean up. but I felt I'd already been really seeking a solution, because the mornings usually go okay, like when we have Sunday morning service, but anytime we have an evening thing, the kids are just like, it's not good for anybody. It's not a fun time. And it doesn't matter if I use all the time to share the gospel, because they're not really getting anything. Anyways, so I went thrifting and looked for a bunch of toys to add. We had like a playroom, but it really only had like a Lego table in it and like one other kind of big toy. It didn't really have a lot of unstructured play. And so I got a lot of stuff. And the first night was really encouraging. Like, the parents showed up, and for the first time ever, they asked, "What did you give my children?" in a positive way, because they were actually like still for like 3 minutes. So that was like it was really encouraging to see that work out well. And I've been kind of bouncing ideas with other volunteers that are within my ministry of like, what do you see that we need to change? And we talked about this even before I read the chapter. When we looking about like, what purpose does this time have? But I do a lot of structured stuff. We do lots of games. We're not like sitting and learning a lot, but I, as the leader, cannot address any kid's behavior while I'm also trying to run a game. And right now, I just don't have any volunteers who are competent in pulling a kid who is disrupting a game. And we have like relatively violent children, and it may require like physical restraint, which I don't feel comfortable asking anyone to do that who doesn't feel comfortable, because that's just a recipe for disaster. And so during the playtime, I've had a few opportunities to experience it. Getting a chance to talk one-on-one with a kid, like getting those opportunities has been a lot easier, that I'm not trying to do both things. And getting to talk to them while they're like kind of looking at some other stuff. Like the story with Max while he's thinking about Play-Doh, getting a chance to actually open up with them.
We've done bits and pieces of unstructured playtime in our ministry. So like we've had like coloring pages and stuff like that out, or crafts if it plays well into the lesson. And it's something that I've wanted to add in, but we just got a room. We have an attached preschool, and they have almost all of what used to be our children's ministry rooms. So we don't really have a designated space until this last year that was ours. And even in that space, it's large, it's wonderful, but it's not really big enough to do unstructured playtime, because it's echoey, it'll get loud, and that's just another recipe, right? Like overstimulation, all of that kind of stuff. But as I was reading this chapter, I was like, wow, we could really add this in creative ways and in creative spaces, in a few of the other rooms that we do have available. And we also ran into this problem of our adult classes are meeting at the same time-ish as our kids stuff on Wednesday nights, not Sunday mornings. Sunday mornings is a completely different mess. But on Wednesday nights, and the adults get done later than we do. So I've been trying to figure out, like, how do we make it so that everybody's getting done at the same time, but also respecting the lesson time. And so adding in some unstructured playtime could give us that buffer that we're looking for. So I'm excited to get to do it, and to do it more intentionally, and train our volunteers to use that time valuably, because I think that a lot of times, I know a lot of times our volunteers come in and they sit at the back of the room while the kids are kind of doing their own little thing, which is fine, except that then you're not really engaging with your kid. That will just be in your small group in a little bit. And so it'll take some training and steering and changing, but I'm excited to implement it. I think it'll be good.
We don't have, I'm sorry, Sailor, go ahead.
Go ahead, that's fine. You go.
Okay. I was gonna say, we don't have a Wednesday evening program. We have just Sunday morning. And The only time we really have anything that's close to a game is in the kids' church portion of the morning, where we play a game as part of the lesson. The kids' church time happens during the sermon time of the main worship service in the morning. And the purpose of the game is to have a creative way for the kids to learn about the theme that we're talking about that morning, but also just large motor movement. You know, they get to use their big muscles. So we may have a tag game or red light, green light, or, you know, something like that. So that's where the playtime comes. And our Sunday school teachers, sometimes if there's a game suggested in the Sunday school curriculum, they'll play a game with the kids. But other than that, we don't have playtime. And I was like Jody when I was reading to this chapter. I was like, oh, I just want to play with with the kids all morning long on Sunday mornings. But like Jessica, I'm kind of brainstorming as to how I could fit in some unstructured playtime where our Sunday school teachers are actually playing with their students some kind of card game, or we're building something with Legos, and we're just talking. Like, so how was your week? Yeah, this fun thing happened with my dog did a funny thing this week, or something like that. And so I'm starting to brainstorm, like when we start up church, in the fall, training my leaders, like this is going to be part of the morning, and this is what's expected of you, not to just sit in the back, but to engage with your students and things like that. So I'm looking forward to figuring out how to incorporate this a little more into our Sunday mornings.
There are some curriculums out there that are really good at incorporating this in their content. I used to use Orange, and they are fabulous for this. But pre-COVID, when I was still using Orange, I created or put together a tub of board games, including like lawn-sized Jenga blocks. And I almost bought that like huge Connect 4. You guys seen that before? Like it's like 4 feet tall. But anyways, the kids would come in, love playing with that. I'd print off a 3 by 4 foot coloring picture and tape it on the wall, and the kids would do that together. If you're ever looking for something like that, simple poster, that's where you can print it off of. So they loved those things. And then once COVID hit, and the uncertainty of COVID itself, we got rid of the games because of how everybody was touching pieces, yada, yada, yada. But after reading this, I'm like, man, I would love to bring that back again. I do need to make it a little bit more organized, because it was just kind of one of those things where the kids would be playing with it, having fun. Let's say we had like Guess Who and Trouble and I don't know, another common Candyland. But then the kids, when it was time to clean up, rather than, putting it away nicely, everybody would just throw all the stuff in the tub. So maybe a better way of organizing that. But before play game is, I think, really good. Gives people a chance to talk, like the chapter was talking about too. Right now we use digital games, like we use 1230 Media, and they have a lot of games that we play on our screens that the kids love. And it all varies too. It's questions, it's movement. And that's been a good program to use. So if you guys are looking for, games you can throw up on a screen, 1230 Kids is a really good one to use. And they've got Bible stuff, regular stuff. Yeah. So, but I think after reading this chapter, my goal is to bring like those interactive games back to our rooms.
We have unstructured play as well, but we haven't, reading this chapter was a real eye-opener for me in terms of how unstructured play could be really beneficial for children. And it was really refreshing as well, because I must admit that, there's a lot of talk about, children's church ministry is leaning towards too much fun and too many programs and all this. And I was like, okay. So down the fun, up the discipleship a bit and all that. But actually, everything has its part to play in nurturing the child. And so this is, I'm playful by nature anyway. Like I like to play with the kids ad hoc. I have no qualms with that. But it's actually being a bit more purposeful and seeing how unstructured play can really help build relationships between the children and self-esteem between the children and also between us leaders and the children as well. So yeah, there's a lot of work in that area, but I'm excited.
So we actually do this. We have about a half an hour every morning, right at the start of our program on Sundays and on our midweek program, where the kids just get to go into a room and they have Lego and board games and coloring and there's an air hockey table, a foosball table. Yeah, this is all stuff that's been donated to us, and they get to spend time just hanging out with their friends and with the volunteers, and then we start our big group after that. But yeah, it's not as scary as it sounds. The kids have learned that they have to put stuff away, and I have buckets for all the game pieces that are labeled, and there's a trolley that we keep everything on, and they just know that it all goes back in those buckets and back on that cart, and it all gets cleaned up, and then they come sit in the big group time. So it seems scary, but it actually does work quite well.
Is that
You
all in
find-
one space for you?
It's in one big classroom. Yeah.
Do you find when you have the unstructured play at the beginning that it's easier for them to focus on the large group lesson?
I think so. Like at first we had all of these activity stations in the back of the same room where our big group time was. And we were finding that they were running around a lot in there because the space was bigger. And it felt like then it became a playroom as opposed to a worship place. So I did move it so that it was a separate space, so that they have to like make that little switch in their brains as they move from one room to the other. So I think that has helped. We'll see. I've only done it a couple of weeks, so we'll see if it keeps up that way. But yeah.
So I am at an advantage here because I don't do the children's ministry at our church. I am the director of the preschool that is every day in our church. So I'm dealing with children that are 2 to 5 years old, and we have them for 4 hours Monday through Friday. But I wanted to show you guys that this is our free play innovation lab. I don't know if I can turn my phone around. Okay, here it goes. All right, so like we have the stations, kind of like what you're talking about. And so there's like blocks and things on the back, and then there's tables and spaces to sit. The magnifying glass always chooses somebody. We've got a Chromebook for educational. And then here they can do arts and crafts and Play-Doh. And then for the ones that need to just be kind of quiet, we have a quiet space up there in the loft. And because we are a school, we have a light table underneath there too. But we utilize free play every day. And what we do, and again, we have them 5 days a week, but it's always at the end of the day is our free play, and then playground time is because if there are some things like lessons that we need to handle that day, we're going to start off with that first and then go through everything else. But the free play is so important for us because not just the age that we have, but just to be able to have that creativity to let children do and play of their own is really important. And that gives my teachers the opportunity to walk around and have one-on-one time with each child. I mean, it is a learning process, but even the 2-year-olds, they already know that they have to clean up after themselves at the end of playtime. I can't think of who sings it, but there is a song, and if you Google it, it will come up, but it's vacuum cleaner, clean my room. And we play that every day. And as soon as it comes on, even the 2-year-olds are like, let's clean up, get your blocks. And like everybody starts cleaning up everything. So it's possible to do it. Will it all get put up the way you wanted it to? No, no, but it'll be in mostly the right place and you can kind of do that. But that's also good opportunities for them to learn that responsibility of taking care of their own things. And then if we're able to be in there with enough teachers, we will walk around and be like, oh, you finished with the blocks, you need to put them up before you get something else out. And then we can take that opportunity to just kind of sit down with that one child, help them, show them how to do it and move forward. So it's semi-structured, but it's not structured, but we call it free play. And it's a lifesaver for us. We absolutely love it.
So we do free play with our preschoolers, like age 3, and we do it. So we have Sunday school for 2 and 3-year-olds, 4 and 5. Right now we're kind of all joined. Our 2 and 3s haven't come back quite yet, but in our preschool we do free play right off the beginning, because I find that for the kids that they see the toys. So our room has toys, like it's a toy room, and then we have like a classroom section. I would show you, but it's currently under construction. We just painted and stuff, so it's a little messy, but so we have the toys on one side of the room, and then we have the playtime on the other. And we found that when the kids walk into a room full of toys, they want to play. So we let them play. And then we also found that it helps with our kids that are struggling with maybe leaving mom or dad, to have those toys as kind of, they're there, but they can still hear the lesson. And so they kind of get to engage that way. And we have adult chairs for our too big to play adults who we really would like them to leave, but kids don't want them to. It seems to help with the transition that way. So we find with that, we have before, and then at the end, it also is just playtime with that. And then in all of my classrooms, we have some larger games. So I have Jenga in one room, like the big Jenga blocks. I have a bigger Connect 4, and I have a large size checkers, and I put those in all the rooms, and then the kids play with them as they come and they're waiting. So we don't do this in children's church just because they're coming straight from church. So we don't have as much time, and they're already kind of in that transition. Whereas with Sunday school, they're waiting, they're playing. And so like the little guys have board games. We also have some board games in there that the kids can open up. There's a bucket of Lego in some of the classrooms, depending on the age, just to allow that space for our teachers to, if they're not quite ready, they can still do prep, but the kids can engage with each other. It helps to build community. And then in like we have a grade, what are they? Kindergarten to they're 4, 5, 6 Sunday school class, and their teacher uses the blocks to like engage them, to play with them. They build a tower out of our Jenga blocks, but like not just a Jenga tower. It's got like spaces. They build castles. They have a lot of fun with it, and it really helps. We're looking at bringing in like straws and stuff, so we're not just allowed chaotic, because we do have a lot of kids who are like, nope, too many kids, I'm out. But they have things that they can engage with at different levels, so they can color, or they can play a board game, or they can, and it kind of keeps it quiet, but it lets them play.
While we're on play, I want to mention, I don't know, it's pretty expensive, I think, Godly Play curriculum. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's something we didn't, at a previous church, we didn't purchase all of the Godly Play, but we took parts of what they do and created it to be our own. But you're learning the Bible stories through playing. So it's kind of like a mix between Montessori and active engagement and stuff like that. So if you're looking for some curriculum that focuses mostly on play, that's a really good resource. They've got YouTube videos and things like that you can watch and you can adapt. And we've found flannel boards recently in one of our closets, and they were like, oh, we need to throw these away because nobody uses these. And I'm like, no, keep them, because we do. And I've just got a text message from our children's church leader, and she's like, I want to use the flannel board this week, because again, it's inviting the kids into the story that we're using, and it helps kind of cement for the younger kids some of those ideas.
We also have our unstructured play before service. And so in our fellowship hall, the first half is like games and stuff for the kids. And then the second half, we have tables set up for adults, and we have donuts and coffee and juice and granola bars and all the things, because we find a lot of kids tend to come to church not having breakfast. And so that is just something that we started doing. And so it allows all of the adults that are part of our celebration team. So the adults, Jasper, just a minute, please. So all of the adults that spend time talking to kids after service during our family worship week about what they learned throughout the month in kids church, they're in the back and they're building connections with the kids. Or we also have like a Wii, and we have the larger Jenga blocks and the larger Connect 4 and the checkerboards and the card games. And then we also have Beat That, which is like a minute to win it type game for our older kids that are more like in youth group age, and coloring pages, all the things. Just a minute, okay, bud? And then after service, we have another session of unstructured play where our pastor will actually take the kids out and he'll play baseball or soccer or football or catch with the kids. So I am so blessed to have a pastor who is like a huge advocate for children's ministry. But then also all throughout our service, we have a 2-minute rule. So we don't talk for 2 minutes without having some kind of activity or structured play. But then there's also like our small group time where the kids are able to have some of those, more intimate discussions about like the places that they go and the people that they're praying for, the people in their life. And it allows us as the adults to go through and talk to the kids about what they're learning. I know you want to talk to me. But another thing that we started doing is my son bought a skateboard yesterday and my kids are like going nuts. But we have like these little pictures. Go get one of those pictures with the faces on it, please. And I have them here. But we started doing like a sacrifice of praise before service. And so we and it's got like little emotion faces on them that I found for free off of Teachers Pay Teachers. I don't know, they're somewhere over there. And so the kids will like say, something happened this week that made me mad or something made me sad or whatever. And it allows us to know as staff, like, here's the kids that we want to make sure we connect with before they leave church. And so that's really helped even eliminate some of the behavior problems, because we know if kids are coming in hurt or angry or irritated or frustrated, then when we can, teach with grace. Here, let me see. So here's one of them. So here's the happy and surprised. I have to like figure out how this works. So we just have a couple of those, and so it just kind of helps get kids church off on the right foot and helps us just kind of navigate the entire thing through just like a little playful activity, because they get stickers that they get to stick on a blank canvas that we present to church during family worship week.
So do they tap those faces as they come in to let you know how they're feeling, or is it?
They get stickers. So
Okay.
we have 1-inch little round stickers, and so they'll get one of the stickers. My daughter's getting me the big rolls because I just draw, like, repeat the faces on them in Sharpie. And so they get 2 of them. One goes on so like, here's the silly face. Here's the angry face. And so they get one to stick on their journal for that week, which is like their craft that we keep in the classroom all year long. And then they go home with our kids' church celebration service. And then one goes on the blank canvas. And then at the end of service, if they feel like God met them and he touched them in any way, then they get like a little shiny hearts or like a star, because boys don't like hearts, that they stick on there too. So that way we have like a representation of like, here's how kids are coming into church feeling. And here's like all of the shimmery, shiny stickers are what God is doing in our children's ministry.
Awesome. Anybody else? All right, question 3. In this chapter, we showed how ministries can use playtime to help children understand, control, and express their emotions. In your opinion, does this seem like a good use of ministry time? Is a child's ability to control their emotions and behaviors relevant to their spiritual formation? Explain.
One of the things I really took note of on page 75, when they're talking about some guidance, the tip number 5 about not evaluating their play, like trying to help them regulate their feelings and identify those feelings. Like, instead of saying like, that isn't nice, that's not how we play, saying like, oh, the dinosaur is really mad. I really liked that. And like, just the chance to see that, and getting a chance for kids to talk about their feelings and even just act out things that they need to work through. Within the toys that I got, one of the things I found was like this little schoolhouse that I'm really excited to see, like kids just working through some of the stuff that happens at school.
I definitely think it's worth, it's a good use of ministry time, because I just can't even think as an adult, if I had something happen, it's hard for me to focus or be open on like maybe a task at hand. So like if something happened on my way to church and I am like just, super emotional and I'm upset. When I go to service and I walk out, I'm like, what did I even just hear? Because I was so, focused in on what was going on in my heart or in my mind or my emotions. So I do think it's really good to, if you see a kid that's just not acting himself, to acknowledge them and investigate and acknowledge, sympathize with whatever they're going through, make them feel heard. Because when you've got someone doing that, it makes you feel validated, and it kind of, at least for me, it kind of takes my emotions away from it. I'm like, okay, I can like calm myself down and wait, what was Pastor Randy saying? Yeah, that was really, like, it gets me right back in. So definitely valuable.
I think that also when we help our kids, so sorry, there's noises in my office and I don't know why. So
No.
I locked myself out. That's why I was late. And so I'm not really sure if I did something or if there is something else. I don't know. I have a fear of a mouse. And so I just am like kind of terrified. Anyway, back on track. So one of the things I found, so my son has ADHD, like I've talked about him a bit before, but he has very explosive emotions. And one of the things I found was that when I start naming the emotions that I see him playing out, so, whatever, suddenly those emotions don't seem so big and they don't seem so scary. And I think when it comes to spiritual formation of a children, I don't know that, that taking, an hour each day to teach them how to control their anger is going to necessarily have massive impact in their spiritual formation. But I think that when we can help kids identify those emotions, it alleviates the stress, like you were talking about, Jody, like all you can think about is how horrible, the speeding ticket you got was, or whatever happened that day. And that's all you're thinking about, and you don't see Jesus. But when we name it, suddenly it loses that power, and they're like, oh, and now they can pay attention to the praying, and I think in that sense, it helps with their spiritual formation, it opens them up to God. And I think also when we validate their emotions, one of the things we really get, and especially when they're coming from trauma, maybe based homes and stuff, is that those emotions aren't necessarily seen as valid. We have to act a certain way. We have to be a certain way. And then when they have those emotions, well, something's wrong with me because I'm angry and I can't tell you I'm angry, or I'm trying not to show you I'm angry. And I think even in our kiddos that are really quiet and they're internalizing everything, that to have and be told, like one of the things I tell my kids all the time is it's okay to be angry. It's what we do with the anger. And so I think when we do those things, we're telling them that it's okay. God made you this way. Like you can be angry, and it opens them up to that relationship with God in a different light, instead of always feeling like I'm just a horrible person. I'm always angry, or I'm always, so it kind of plays a two-part, but I don't know if we need to make it the primary focus. I feel that we can encourage our parents and teach our parents and their caregivers how to walk through that. There's so many resources out there that parents can use at home to help kids, whether it's books or worksheets or workbooks or all of that stuff. And I think that in our classrooms, while we do need to spend time validating those emotions, I don't know that we need to necessarily teach on them or spend, every Sunday going through that, because then we're taking the focus off maybe who we need to be talking about. It plays in, but yeah, that's just how I feel.
I totally think that, yeah, I agree that there's a lot of value in helping navigate this world, especially as we're finding, my generation of parents are finding that, you know what, we were never really taught how to, some of us were, I was not one of them. We were never really taught how to navigate this ourselves. And so now that we've got young kids that we're raising up or working with, we're like, well, how do you do this? And the one thing I love to do, and I tell my volunteers to do often, is when you see a kid upset, you say, oh, your face is looking very angry. I mean, like, you're not going to do that to a fifth grader. You're going to use different words because they're just going to look at you and roll their eyes, I guess. But when you're doing it there, then they can take it home even, right? Then it's not their job to teach their parents how to do the social emotional learning, but that's what's going to end up happening. My son is 3. He goes to a school where they do social emotional learning. And it's something that I've worked really hard with him and his sister. My husband sees it's important, but he's like, is it necessary? And the other day, my husband and I were talking at dinner, and he's got a manly voice, so it carries and it sounds more powerful than a soft-spoken woman's voice. And my son looked at him and said, Daddy, you're getting angry. Take a step back and relax and breathe. And my husband was like, oh. And then he gave him the space to explain, right? Like, well, no, I'm not angry and all of that kind of stuff. So I think if we're doing that even in our ministries, kids can take those back home. And if it feels safe enough for them, they can then explore, and then parents can come back and say, wait, my kid said this. Why would they say this? And it gives us the opportunity to then resource them. Like Kristen was saying, right? There's books, there are all of these things to help them navigate this world of emotions that we're often told you shouldn't be feeling or dealing with.
Well, I think too, it's definitely not like a drawn out hour-long process. Like kids, we have their attention spans for 1 to 2 minutes plus minus their age. So focusing in on that emotion in those few moments, redirecting, and we're good. And then getting those parents those resources. So yeah, I think you just focus on the kids for the short few minutes you got their attention span, and you move on. Because us dwelling on it for them, they're just kind of like, oh, look, there's an airplane. Oh, look, the dust, like they don't, they're done and over with it. So.
I had seen something the other day that said not everything has to be a teachable moment either. So like a mom was saying something like, oh, my daughter just said, oh, I'm so mad, I just hate the world, or something like that. And of course, as a parent or a ministry leader, our first reaction is to say, oh, no, you don't hate, help them navigate this. And she's like, they don't always need that. They're just getting it out there. And so then you just say, yeah, that sucks, or whatever, so I think that that's important for us to remember too. So we don't always have to make everything a teachable moment, especially with emotions.
I think this is the last question in question 3 said, is a child's ability to control their emotions and behaviors relevant to their spiritual formation? And in my home growing up, it was always wrong to be angry, but I was never taught what to do with the anger that I felt and what was underneath that. And that impacted my view of God when I was an adult. And so I think it is really important to help kids navigate this, because I think as they're growing spiritually, if we're not helping them, and like you said, it doesn't have to be an hour-long thing, and we can resource parents and all of that kind of stuff, but just learning to deal in an emotionally healthy, spiritually healthy way with emotions can impact their view of God and who he is and how he relates to them. And so I think it's really important to their spiritual formation as you're growing up.
Any other thoughts on kids' ability to control their emotions and its impact on their spiritual formation?
I just think that it speaks to, the fruit of self-control, and as a way of, when you engage with kids in that manner, it's you're helping them develop self-control, which is just something that they need as a Christian.
Yeah, I, kind of piggyback, what Selah just said. I think a lot of it is just not just self-control, but the fruit of the spirit altogether. And it's the fruit of the spirit because it's fruit that we can't produce in our life on our own and through our own efforts. And if we try, we will fail every single time. And so I think if we can point kids to like, okay, yes, you can feel angry and you can feel disappointed and you can feel cheated, you can feel all of those different things, but we can invite God into all of those spaces, and we can allow him to give us peace when there shouldn't be peace. And he can give us self-control when we really want to, just have that big outburst. And so I think if we really truly value, spiritual formation, then it would go back to, this is how we see God, and this is how we You know, and this is how we go to him when we're feeling all of these different things, and trust that he's big enough to handle our disappointment, and that he loves us enough to sit with us in the midst of our disappointment. You know, reading this question took me back to the Jesus Revolution. Have you guys seen that movie yet? When Greg is like, you know, he sees die on the window and he's like freaking out and, you know, all that stuff. And he's like, I'm just gonna sit here and I'm gonna be here until you're done. You know, it took me back to that scene of just like, oh, I love that movie. But
I can't wait to see that movie though. Heard so many good things. All right, well, we'll move on to one last question here. Think of a child in your ministry who is standoffish, rude, or defiant. Imagine that you spent 15 minutes every week playing one-on-one with this child. You let the child choose the activity and were fully engaged. How do you suppose this special playtime would affect the child's behaviors and attitudes at church? What effect might this have on the group at large? I know it says to try and find out, but let's hear your thoughts first. Or Hannah, did you do that this past Sunday and how did it go?
Well, I was going to share, it's not exactly about unstructured play, but about being really intentional about one-on-one. We have a 5th grader who fits this description, or fit this description really well, and had a couple of suicide attempts, and had been like aggressive in class a few times and would not respond to me. Straight up told me, I will defy you. Like, I had to pull them into a meeting after he tried to hit another kid with a chair, lifted a chair over his head to hit this other kid. And when trying to talk with him, like, this is unacceptable, says, I will not obey you. I will defy you. And so over the past few months, I've been very intentional, because I'd gone to this other trauma-informed training, talking about being intentional, one-on-one, physical contact, and looking you in the eye and saying that I'm happy that you're here, like doing that every single week. I'm going to cry telling the story, but last night he could tell that I was very overstimulated by just the kids yelling and they weren't listening. And he looked at me, he's like, Miss Hannah, would you like to breathe with me and take deep breaths with me? And just have seen like some real change in his behavior towards church and his attitude towards church. And just the encouragement of being like really intentional about doing more than just the programmed stuff that's allowed. Like, you know, there's nothing in my curriculum that says to make sure to touch Rhodey's shoulder and say, I'm happy that you're here. How was your week? But getting that opportunity has just been really incredible.
That's awesome. And I love your heart, Hannah. And maybe that's what he needed. Like, he needed a moment to reciprocate the same thing you've been teaching him, but being so intentional. I think of back to my student teaching, which feels like many moons ago. I did middle school and I was horrified of them, dreaded them. And my very first day, I had a student walk in the door. She literally walked up to my face and said, you're nothing to me. You're garbage. I don't have to listen to you. And I just like stood there in utter shock. And I called my professor after my first day and was in tears. I said, please don't grade me on this. This is so hard. I had this student come up to me and he's like, well, let's just take it day by day. It's just day one. The next day I had one of my teachers that I was working with. They're like, well, you can't save everybody. So you just teach the ones that want to, learn and want to be here. And I'm like, how is that a good teacher heart? Like, I was just so torn and conflicted. And so I decided that I was just going to love on this student. And every day she came in, I, had a brief conversation with her, invested in her. And by the end of that semester, when it came time for my professor to come and evaluate me, she was the student that would come in, and when some other students would talk, she would turn around, she'd go, shut up, Miss Boudreau is talking. We need to listen to, like, she became my best friend, little student, in the classroom. And she wrote me a letter my last day, and I still have it to this day, and I've actually reconnected with her on Facebook. And she wrote this letter and she said, you are the only person that has ever made me feel like a real person. And this was a sixth grader, you guys. And she went from being the worst student in class, like she was the troublemaker, she was the bully, to being the most involved and amazing student. She went on to get a soccer scholarship, went off to college. Like her path totally changed. And it was just because I gave her that time. I'm not saying it's all me, but I'm just saying like that the time invested is truly so important. We don't know always all the time what's going on. But like that really made an impact on me. Like, hard, like loving a kid does work, and it can change their life.
And I
That's
think
really
great that that
encouraging.
gives you more opportunities for that.
Can you say that again? Sorry.
I just said, I think unstructured play gives more opportunities to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's a really encouraging story, because I've got like a couple of girls in a group at the moment, children's church, and they're just, I wouldn't describe them as defiant, but they really don't have any appetite for me. I'll be like, hi, and they'll turn around and walk the other way, and I'm just like, oh goodness, Lord Jesus, help me, because this is like, help me to love on these girls who are clearly rejecting me in front of everybody, and they don't care about it at all. And it's just yeah, so yeah, that was an encouraging story to hear.
Don't give up, just love, because they're hard for a reason. Plus they're preteens or teens or whatever. They've got emotions that are all over the place, but just don't give up, because I think that's what happens in our society is they're just given up on so easily. They give a teacher, a volunteer, whatever, a hard time just once, and they're given up on. I mean, goodness, thank God Jesus didn't do that to us every time we have a hard day. But yeah. Well, I'm not going to move on to question 5, but does anybody else have, an idea of what you think intentional play like this would have an effect on a student in your class, in your groups?
Just think stronger relationships, like the opportunity to actually walk alongside someone and get involved in their mess, and just help them along, and teaching the kids and watching them do it and growing in that. I think that's what church is, right? Learning how to walk alongside someone and pointing them to Jesus at the same time.
One thing that I think would be kind of cool, I don't know if you guys even have a student, but maybe we can all pray for each other with a student you may have in mind that needs extra help or extra prayer. If anyone wants to sorry, I can't talk today. If anyone would like just to share that child's first name, you can jot them down and, pray for them over this next week. Mine would be a boy named Weston.
Definitely Renaya.
I have 2, Willow and Kayla. They come as a pair.
Mine is Liam.
Becky
mine
says Oliver and Jeremiah.
I put mine in the chat, but mine is a 3-year-old Wyatt.
Jackie, who was yours? I heard you talk, but I missed it.
Liam.
And I have a favor. I'm in my car on my way to pick up my children. Can one of you just Facebook message me this so that I can pray for everyone too, please?
Yep, I got you.
Thank you.
Mine
Maybe
is-
we should even just post it in the group.
Yeah.
So that way everybody that's not on here, we can.
Yep.
pray
So
for
I'm gonna
them
go over
too.
the list to make sure I got everyone. I have Weston, Renaya, Willow. Is it Kayla? Yep, okay.
Yeah.
Wyatt, Oliver, Jeremiah, and Liam. Did I miss anybody? Okay. Awesome. Well, I will definitely add this to this group and we can pray for these kids this week. And I'll be in prayer for, we can be,
Did you see Bentley on the chat?
nope, I missed that. Bentley, okay. Thank you. And be in prayer for each other, like, if you're gonna try and apply intentional, playing conversation with them for those 15 minutes, praying that that really does work. I know we won't see like a big change in 1 week, but over time, love over time can do many things. So, that will be it for today. Could we have someone close us in prayer?
I'll pray. God, thank you so much that you have built us to enjoy time together, that you've built children with the ability to play, and that you can use that for your glory as well as everything else. Give us eyes to see how we can speak your truth and life into playtime and use it as a productive way to share your good news. Give our volunteers eyes to see what we're feeling so passionately as we read this, and for us to convey to them how we can use it for the gospel. I lift up Weston and Renaya, Willow, Kayla, Liam, Oliver, Jeremiah, Wyatt, and Bentley. Just this week, as they come into our space, that you give us the opportunity to speak your love into them. Fill us up with your love and patience and joy and peace, so that it overflows and we're able to model how you can change our hearts to the kids coming in. Just continue to show us how to work with these children who have been through trauma, that we're able to still communicate with them and share your love with them. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thanks, Hannah. One thing before I forget, I know we're only just about, I think, a little under halfway through our book, but I am going to create a separate post for questions to ask the authors as we get closer to the end. That way, as we read each chapter, we don't forget about things we wanted to talk about. Like I know chapter 2 was a big one for us where we had some questions, but I will pin it in the featured. That way you guys can just comment questions and I can share it with him as we get closer to the end of our book. So other than that, I hope you guys have a great week. Be praying for you and have a great Sunday. See you later.
Bye.